total cost after all?
Well, we might have to rehab a little bit of pipeline.
Bill, I think the issue is that the majority of that pipe's that 10-inch pipe that goes off the FPL easement, then goes cattywampus, straight over through Pine Crest and into Gateway Greens. That pipe, unless and until they come and sign a contract, we're not gonna touch that pipe. It can be full of holes, we don't know. But that's not necessary to implement it for use by us.
And I guess, Chris, this is just the engineering services of the
Correct.
professional services to modify the permits, get that 5-year permit. And there will be an expense 5 years from now when you try to extend it to 20.
Correct.
Once we
Yeah.
show South Florida that we've been good.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. And that brings us to proposal for design of new irrigation system and bidding process on Griffin Drive.
And this was, came up with Austin was talking about that section of Gateway Boulevard, from Commerce Lakes to Daniels, and we did the GIS down there, and the next step is we were gonna do irrigation design, and then also have that new system bid, so we could have a per linear foot cost, what it's gonna take to replace the aging irrigation system down Gateway Boulevard, and also bring into that a discussion about plant material, have an arborist evaluate the oaks for useful life, and what happens if we trim the roots to stop the paving damage. I was moving forward with this, if you remember too, we put a 15% R&R set aside for irrigation from our bills. We're starting to accumulate some money where we can start rebuilding these irrigation systems. So this was the first step, and at the board meeting last week, they started talking about going with the new irrigation system up Griffin Drive to 82. And to do the GIS effort for that section would probably be $8,000 or $9,000 plus another probably 10 to 12 to do that, the design of that system.
It's my understanding that we have the capital assets in the way of the lines out there, the mains, but we have no local irrigation system whatsoever.
Correct. And the big thing with that is probably part of that roadway is just road base that was turned up. That's why it's difficult for anything to drive. If you wanted to irrigate, put down the land and put on the sod, you're talking $500,000 plus your recurring water bills, your maintenance for mowing that section of the roadway. And as far as it being an alternative for disposal to the FPL easement, I think if you have flooding in neighborhoods that's in streets on Griffin, that you aren't gonna be turning sprinklers on and pushing water into those drainage areas during a storm, so.
That's not gonna make anybody happy.
No, but it was really, I brought this up because I was gonna move ahead with my plan unless the board wanted to change priorities and actually start looking at doing that section of Griffin Drive from Pine.
So
Pine
this
Rivers.
is to replace what really needs to be replaced on Gateway Boulevard.
Correct.
And then
That's
and then the price could be used to consider moving to Griffin.
You could have a linear foot cost then, because if you're gonna go in there too and put conduit in for your irrigation where it is, you might as well put a second conduit in for your streetlights, cause it's as compromised as the irrigation. But it's to get us the linear foot cost to rehab, and the only thing we don't know is plant material.
Yeah.
And that'll take some work talking about, that's probably the only issue that's more contentious than littorals. What are you gonna put in the medians? You know, do you go with low water use landscape, efficiency, the new look, or do you go with the oak canopy that's carrying your roads up?
I like littorals.
Mr. Guy?
Or flooding?
Madam
We'll
Chair,
add that to it.
I am thoroughly confused now. The action requested is to approve a proposal for a new irrigation system on the east side of Griffin Drive.
Yes.
Now, the east side of Griffin Drive to 82 is where the Lee County is building a new school building, is it not?
Well, clear at the end,
What?
clear at the end.
Well, you're gonna go from Primal Lakes to Boulevard to
Start clear
Gateway
that-
82.
Start at Gateway Boulevard, there is no irrigation system along the east side, right side going out. of that road. There's no irrigation.
I understand it. Why would you start work on the east side of Griffin when the Lee County School District is building a building there and tearing all of this stuff up?
Well, it would take us about the same amount of time to design it, and my priority more is replacing aged infrastructure, not putting new pipe in the ground, but, the board brought it up last week about a possibility of, so I'm just reacting to that, whether it's be a change in priority and.
This,
Yeah.
the actual proposal in here, if you read it, is for
Gateway Boulevard.
Gateway Boulevard.
Well, I figured that was
Daniels
just an
and
error,
Thomas
because
Street.
every place else it says Griffin Drive.
I know, I had to figure it out myself. This is the original proposal that Chris wanted to bring before the board for approval, and then Griffin Drive came into the mix, and he's saying, why don't we go ahead with the original proposal and get that cost estimate for Gateway Boulevard, and then we can use those same figures to consider Griffin Drive at a later date.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sounds like you're getting ahead of the, getting ahead of the curve on the,
Yes, sir.
on the
Yeah,
way.
Madam Chair, if I may ask, I had some email exchange with Chris today because I was confused too. I asked him the estimated construction cost of the project, and it's in excess of 450,000. I think you mentioned $500,000, possibly even today. And for the retention of professional services for a project of which the construction cost is greater than $325, you have to go through the Competitive Consultants Negotiation Act, or CCNA as it's called. If we're talking about Griffin, it sounds like it's gonna be a smaller number. I'm not sure, Chris.
Oh, yeah, it's the design fee, and that's about $5,000.
Right now, I'm talking about the construction
So the
cost.
construction cost, it'd probably be $100,000.
Yeah, so that would not need to be competitively solicited if you're just doing Griffin. I understand the dilemma, I understand the concept of trying to get costs and estimates. If you want to characterize this, and I'm not sure quite how you do, because it's kind of a hybrid now, if you want to characterize it as a planning or study activity for this project, the Gateway Boulevard irrigation project, it has a different threshold, a different category, where the fees for the professional services can't exceed $35,000. So that fee is under the threshold for professional services, but the question is doing the design and getting
That's the
bidding,
problem.
is that really
That's the problem.
planning or study activity? And I don't think it is, and that's the dilemma.
And the first step in that, of course, is to do the GIS mapping so that the designer has something to work from, which is more a planning type study.
It is not planning, it's design.
Yeah, oh yeah, we did the GIS already, which Austin showed you, and this second set is actual design and bidding, bid pricing for that segment.
Right, but if it's Gateway Boulevard, if it's more than the 325, then you have to go through CCNA.
Yeah.
That's the rub.
But even to do this task authorization,
Yes, because the project, if it's Gateway Boulevard, the project construction cost is estimated to be more than 325.
But even though this is the first phase, and it could terminate after this?
Correct, the statute doesn't differentiate, it just says for professional services, for a project, the basic construction cost of which is estimated by the agency to exceed the threshold amount provided. Or for planning or study activity. Now, if there's a way to characterize it as a planning or study activity,
Are we doing this as a contract amendment with task authorization with Tetra Tech?
No, Russ Geiger's been working on this with
So we got
HydroLogic.
a problem then. Okay, I see what you're coming from.
And we're really talking about 4 medians, Tony, so I don't even think the design and construction of those bids are gonna come back more than 200,000. That's why in that segment I didn't pay much attention to. The Griffin's totally different. Those fees would be,
well, again, if it's the Gateway Boulevard, it's gonna come on in under 325, and that's what this proposal is for, then that's fine. But if the Gateway Boulevard segment is estimated to be more than 325, then this isn't fine. As is.
So
what do you estimate this, what this project would be?
200 to 250 tops.
For
This
Gateway
for-
Boulevard?
Yeah,
Gateway
you're only talking about 4 medians down there.
So if we keep it split, we're fine.
But that's everything, the design, bid process,
Oh, yeah.
that, and the construction, but the construction cost of that project would be, I thought it was 500,000 before, I'm sorry.
Well, that's talking about doing Griffin Road from basically our office up to 82. And that's what I was mentioning would be 500,000, just to
Okay.
put sod and soil and
This
that's,
is for,
yeah, that's.
So this Daniels to Commerce Lakes Drive and Gateway Boulevard, that's under 325 estimated construction cost?
he's saying 2 to 250.
Okay, then okay, because again, I thought,
It's an estimate.
yeah, I thought it was Gateway Boulevard was the 450, 500 one now, okay.
And Tony, the professional fees too on that section, just to put it in perspective,
That's actually being, I'm sorry, I'm getting
um,
Gateway
is
Boulevard.
like $7,100 for all that design.
Okay, again, if the estimated construction cost for the project defined in this proposal is less than 325, then we're good.
And this is just the median, not the sides.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a little confusing how it's laid out.
I understand now.
And I was really just trying to get the discussion going when the priority changed, because it was the same
That worked.
kind of concept.
That worked.
One more.
Sure, go ahead.
And this is to whoever can answer. Do we know if there's any plan from the county or DOT to do any work on the road, specifically on Gateway Boulevard? Is there any plan, other than the roundabouts, but any modification to the roads itself? Is that,
Not at this
Not in
time.
the 5-year plan, but they're always talking about 4-lane in Griffin.
yeah.
Of course, if you did that, some of that landscaping would go away.
Well, and even like, I think there are some codes for roads that we don't have on ours.
Well, they have the collector road that's over by Arborwood, but that's a money deal. That's not gonna be in within 5-10 years. The only thing I can see is there will be a big discussion on whether we 4-lane Griffin or we 4-lane the rest of Gateway Boulevard, which one comes first.
But I thought, I thought some of the county road codes were, what do you call it, on the side of the road?
Swales?
Swales, valley gutters, you know, curves.
Curbs maybe, yeah, I thought
Oh,
that we basically got around that.
don't know,
Okay.
don't know.
Okay. It's not a big deal if it's the median, but I know the inside, I was just making sure if there was, that we were sure that the county wasn't gonna do anything.
Anytime you start putting in curbs, you're gonna be putting in drain inlets, and anytime you have drain inlets, you gotta put in pipe. I don't know, that's gonna be interesting to see how that ties together.
Any comments on this?
Yeah.
No.
Are we gonna approve it?
Yeah, I think it needs to be done. It's a mess out there. That thing's on cake. I make the motion to go on ahead and proceed with the work on Daniels, or on Gateway Boulevard between Daniels and, what is it, Commerce Lakes?
Commerce Lakes.
Commerce Lakes Drive.
Wait a minute,
Which is
this, we're on,
look at the proposal, not that sheet.
I think, can you be specific in your motion to call out the median, like?
Yeah, and I
Yeah, the
think-
median between Daniels and Commerce Lakes Drive.
Yeah, I think, the motion would be to authorize and approve the proposal dated November 7th, 2019, for the new irrigation system from the entry on Daniels to Commerce Lakes Drive on Gateway Boulevard.
As opposed to this right here.
As opposed to the heading.
Yeah, opposed to the heading. I'll make that change.
All right, I'll second that.
now, are we gonna, if this passes, can we get the heading of this resolution changed before the final
Clarification.
minutes are
Yeah,
approved?
yeah, that's a good point.
So you can just
Madam Chairman?
reword that.
Yes.
Thank you.
For the record, make sure it's a proposal for irrigation design and bidding for Gateway Boulevard, not Griffin Drive.
We'll have everybody else do that. That's the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Renewal of contracts for use of the Sherman Soccer Park complexes.
And the soccer complex contracts run till December 31st, so we just brought them up for renewal, so they could be executed prior to the end of the year. asked the representatives from the two soccer leagues and also, George, if they could attend the meeting. They were all very busy, but I just wanted to read for the record. I asked them if they had any comments. And one of them was, we've been instructed not to close the gate if people are still in the parking lot when we leave. Is that still true? And can we have until the end of each season to submit the list of non-resident fees for audit? Typically, we pay an estimated amount and we audit it at the end of the season. They're saying with their work schedule, especially at the beginning of the year, it makes it tough. And Mark kind of said the same thing. He wanted to know if it'd be possible to increase the time frame to provide the gateway, the 90% field rental deposit, non-gateway fee from 30 days to 45 days. Simply because he said at the beginning of the season, they're real busy.
Move approval of this item.
Do you have any issues with their request, Chris?
No, I really don't, and the only thing John Robinson said is his season's a little different than Mark and George, because they run from August to May with tryouts in April and May, so, their schedule's a little bit different. But he hasn't had any problems with it. It's still a year-to-year contract, and Mark did ask if he could make his contract for 2 years instead of 1 to keep from coming back every year to do this. But those were the only comments I got from the leagues.
I'm not in favor of that, but.
Well, what I'd recommended in the past for all the leagues is to have a master service level agreement and then have, like a statement of work, because really, I mean, these contracts don't change that much.
They don't, but we might see if anybody else is interested in renting our facilities instead of.
Well, there's always a termination clause, but I mean, I have no problem with an annual, as long as, I mean, it's not like we're really not nitpicking over.
The question I had is, I only had one contract in my book.
That's what I was gonna ask.
They're all the same, the signature sheets, the contracts are the same except for,
All the wording is the same, you just take out GSA and put in
correct,
gateway flag football and,
Okay.
correct in the signature block, and otherwise the timeframes and all the contracts are identical, and the only thing that changed, and that was taken out a few years ago, is that P&L statement, you know, an income statement from the leagues, but we took those out across the board.
Don't even mention those.
Well, they're gone.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Tinkley. The only question I have is, if they're all the same, my only comment is in paragraph 3A, I think it has been in all the agreements. The last sentence says that on page 4, the GSA will receive first priority in scheduling field time during the term of this agreement, so long as it submits schedules as outlined. So if each one of those has that, I'm just, so how you, if each one of them has first priority.
Are they saying that they consent to that?
Yeah.
They all practice playing nice with each other, and we
We'll put that as an asterisk down there, okay. That's good.
they're better at working out their issues with themselves than we are working out with them.
for future, I would strike that for
Oh, I think that's, yeah.
future consideration, especially if you're gonna multi-use this contract,
There's
I
3
would strike
parties,
it.
yeah.
I would strike.
Okay, Mr. Guy made a motion, I assume that motion included, Gateway Flag Football Association, Gateway Soccer Association, and the Elite Soccer Association contracts.
By all means. And it also means that the first line of the action requested should be January 1st through December 31st, not through December 1st. If you look at page 96 of the contract itself, it says December 31st.
You are correct. Go ahead.
I'll second for, discussion, and you add the expansion to 45 days, you didn't have any problem with 45 days, and what was the other one, the end of?
Yeah, they just wanted an additional 15 days, from 30 to 45 days for the field rental deposit.
Is that paragraph 7B, Chris, on page 6, is that it?
Yes, sir.
You included that as well, Bill?
I did.
Okay,
And you included in your
I
second?
included it in mine.
Excellent. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we got 3 to 1 with Mr. Tinkle opposing. All Consent agenda items. Anything out of the consent agenda that anybody wants to, pull?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Motion to approve consent agenda items 5A and B. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I just wanted you to see. Okay, supervisor comments. Mr. Tinkle.
None.
Mr. Banks.
I think with Chris wrapping up his employee reviews, and as we're leading into, his review in January, it's probably a good time for us to do an employee survey. I'd like to start drafting that out, employee survey, employee satisfaction survey. We just need to talk about how it's delivered, because it should be delivered independently. So if no one has any issues, I'll just start.
How you gonna do this?
It'll just be a survey to all of the staff with, how satisfied are they with their working condition? How satisfied are they with the district, with the board's direction, or whatever? I'll start listing the question out, and then I'll deliver them to the next meeting, and we can all take a look, and then, shoot that out at some point.
I wondered, I did have one.
Okay, go ahead.
Kenny didn't make it, and he had a really important deal that is going to be a problem.
Would you back up a minute? You said what?
Kenny didn't make it back because of his emergency.
Oh.
But before the meeting, he was talking to me about an issue that apparently is not just limited to any one area of Gateway, but throughout. And that's our water meters and our irrigation meters are being just torn apart by the oak trees. And what are we going to do? You're talking about a pretty nice expense on doing that, but it's also going to get to be real personal, real quick. There's one, are the trees that's causing it a personal tree? In other words, is it on my property and my tree is tearing it up? WCI Westinghouse years ago never thought about this. Those little saplings they put in were about the size of a toothpick, now are 20 inches across, and the roots are just tearing the daylights out of this. What I'm trying to figure out is what's the solution? Going in there and tearing out the tree, to me, is the only logical one, because if you move, if the pits are like this, and you go out like this, you know what those roots are gonna do, they're just gonna go on out. How do we do this without taking down one heck of a lot of oak trees? And the question is, who pays for it?
When you think about the hullabaloo we had with the palm trees 4 or 5 years ago, you,
I love those.
I think that's what I was alluding to.
I don't think we're gonna get that solved this evening.
Well, no, he wasn't here, he was going to bring that up, and he's got a problem. I'm gonna go out with him sometime next week and take a look at it, but I just know what it's like in my neighborhood. You're talking
You're
about what?
breaking up the pavement along the edges.
I
of
raised
the
this 2
neighborhood.
meetings ago,
We
right?
did.
It's-
We need to really think about,
And it's actually cheaper for us to go in and re-tap a line and run a new line up to the person's line than it is to start messing around with those oak trees and tearing them down and taking them out. And it's a huge, huge problem. In some cases, we hope the line breaks on the customer side, because then they have to come in and fix it. But if it breaks on our side with that tree around it,
Well, there's things that are called easements, that's what's concerned me. Right now, all of these are on the common lot line where you have anywhere from 5 to 6.5 feet either side of the center line, which we're in. But you start doing what you're talking about, now you go outside that, and we have to start going and get, what do you call it, easements. And then you're gonna have those that aren't impacted by this, but yet are gonna pay the bill and say, why are we doing this? Let him pay for it, because he runs from the meter to the house. Why are we
That's
picking up?
why my
I mean, I
tree
could just
is
sit here and
gone.
think of all the problems, and the easy one comes back to, take the trees out.
Well, and even more, add more complexity to it, as we're looking at irrigation and lighting, line refurbishing. Once we start getting that median or all the sides to do any
Oh
type
my
of
God.
irrigation, rehabilitation, running new lines, it's gonna be very difficult to run lines through those oak trees. And then you're gonna have to work around it.
We're looking at, over Gateway Greens, putting in fiber, or getting close to making the decision of putting in fiber. And they, all the people that we've interviewed all say they're going to do it by essentially hand cutting, hand digging, because of the utilities, and now they realize the oak trees, and then they're only gonna directional bore the roads and the driveways. So, they're gonna find out what it's really like to install utilities in Gateway now 30 years after these oaks have had a chance to, take over.
And Tony's wise words always ring in my head. We're at duty to protect our equipment. So if some of these trees come off their yard and destroy our meter box, that's our problem. And if we trim the roots back to protect the box and we kill their tree, we'd likely buying them a tree.
That's absolutely correct. That's an excellent, correct statement of Florida law. We can trim back property that encroaches, but if it kills the tree, we pay for the tree.
Joe,
Or
you
replace it
have
with
a
a palm.
comment?
Yeah.
Certainly.
Replace it with palm.
Oh, the alternative, what I did in my backyard, I trimmed some of the roots of my oak trees.
Joe Schofield from Pelican Preserve. I have been on several oak tree committees in Pelican. And I got the arborist from the University of Florida, I think his first name is Howard, but I know his last name is Brown, to come out and talk to us about them. We have problems all the time, and our PPAC has always said, well, maybe the best thing is if one dies, we'll just kind of look the other way and not replace it. But you should actually, it costs money, but you should get an arborist to come in who's educated, has the experience, and let them give you some guidance on oak trees. I know that Howard Brown said that you can trim roots, but if you do it on an older tree, most likely you will kill it. If you have to replace one, you can put guards in the ground to prevent the roots from growing. But the problem is, you're never going to get out of these oak trees. And a professional that knows what they're talking about, rather than us just
Right.
kind of commenting, spend the money, get an expert, figure out. And my own comment would be, if one dies, get it out of there and don't replace it.
Thank you, Joe.
Can you, Chris, that might be a position to put on your org chart, as an arborist, a 3-year contract, and do it one tree at a time. It's more cost effective if you think about it.
Probably.
His name's Johnny Appleseed.
Chainsaw throw.
Mr. Guy, did you have
16,000 a
anything?
year.
I just wanted to compliment my fellow board members on what a successful year we've had in 2019. It's been a pleasure working with you all and with our district manager. I think we've made a lot of success. If you get the chance to have Kenny or Glenn or somebody drive you around and show you some of the improvements that they've been making in the last few months, I think you'll be as impressed as I. And it's been a real pleasure to see you again will be a pleasure to see you again on January 2nd.
Yes, the next meeting. Anything else?
Oh, that,
Yeah.
don't forget that.
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to remind everybody that the Christmas event, holiday event is tomorrow night. Starts at 6, runs till 9. I had to be reminded.
I thought it was last week. Because there wasn't a banner up to tell me you didn't.
You didn't read
Oh,
your,
that
you
was
didn't read your
good.
Stony
My
Brook
wife taped that on
Stony-
my refrigerator.
That was good.
It was in the Stony Brook paper too.
Yes, it was. He didn't read it.
It's taped on my refrigerator.
And the last thing I wanted to do was, because I listened to my fellow board members, and I just want to point out that at the first meeting in January, we'll have the public hearing for the SRF's facilities plan, and will be brought forward the evaluation paperwork for the district manager for us to review, if there's anything we want to add to that.
Yep.
So it'll be a draft of evaluation.
Yeah.
Then at the second meeting, the utility rate increases, workshop on the assessment methodology, and the littoral maintenance cost estimates. Just wanted
Yeah,
to
perfect.
bring that forward.
Easy peasy.
And Madam Chair, also add on, if you could, I think the first meeting in January, the draft of the Attorney General opinion request.
Oh, yes.
And
All right.
And just for clarification on the rates, that's gonna be workshop also, opposed to the public hearing?
Yeah, it's a workshop on the assessment methodology.
Chris, if you can send me all that information so I can do the ad for the workshop that's included in the meeting. Thank you.
And with that, I bid you
Margaret?
do, oh, what?
I have just one quick question.
Sure.
The blast, I wasn't sure if, I just got awarded the blast for Timber Ridge. I wasn't sure if you guys are going to hire somebody to inspect the stuff that is in the blast zone in here, cause it's, to start in mid-January.
Blasting?
Mm-hmm.
Will it affect any of our
The storage
infrastructure?
tank?
Yes, it's
You can't use, nothing you do is underground, you can't see it.
At the storage tank?
the start, one of them is the one behind it.
I think people are
One and a
moving
half years.
foundations.
Here's a firm that's going around Cypress K in this subdivisions advertising for inspections and videotaping of houses and.
Most people, that's the smartest thing to do right off the bat, is just videotape and take pictures.
Yeah, I put people in touch with the Lennar building representatives that lived right along the fence line, cause they were running B9s and they were getting vibration in their house and they were seriously concerned.
And then the only second thing, just because I heard Doug talking about the employee year-end reviews, and I know that the board had talked about the HR guide, employee guide that was revised a few years ago, but I was looking up last week and I didn't see anywhere in the minutes that it was actually adopted, so I was wondering,
Oh, the HR
are we,
manual?
yeah, is it, are you guys gonna be doing reviews on the old HR manual, or are you gonna be using
I
the
put
one that
that
was
on your
draft, because I don't
doc-
think it was ever approved?
Yeah, Mike did some work on it, but I don't think it ever came back for approval.
Correct.
I think we did, because Suzanne Boyd worked on it, and we revised it in 2018.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure
I
it
think
came to the board
2018,
for
remember, it
approval.
was before the board also.
And
Well,
very few changes with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's- but we're working on some other ones right now.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned, it's 5:47, and everybody have a very Merry Christmas
Yes.
and a great New Year. I will see you next year.
Yeah, we need to.
See you tomorrow night.
Same, yes, tomorrow night.
I want to tell you all one other thing. Later in the rock and roll coffee, you can figure out what we have time to talk about.
I try not to.
Build it up.
Can't hear anything you're saying.
Oh, yeah,
You can't hear
yeah.
it now? Oh,
They
yeah.
have everything that
I thought it was coming out.